All right, today we're going to talk about writing equations from tables and graphs. So for the past couple days, we've been talking about writing equations from words, and we've really focused on vocabulary. We're still going to look at vocabulary, but now we're going to take information from tables and graphs. So coordinate planes and then your X and Y tables, okay? So there are some key things that you need to know, and one of them is that time is always independent, okay? Time depends on nothing, okay? Time is gonna keep on going no matter what. Time is independent. And remember, we learned that the independent is the x-axis, okay? So time is always gonna be on this x-axis, okay? Just like hours worked, remember, that's always gonna be the x-axis. If time is ever not on the x-axis, then it's probably wrong. And by probably, I mean it's wrong. Okay, so time is always going to be independent. It's always going to be the x. If for some reason time is not your x, then it is wrong. Okay? All right, so if it says if the graph of a line goes through the origin. So right here, if a graph of a line goes through the origin, it will have an equation with multiplication or division, okay? If my line goes through 0, 0, if it goes through the origin, it will have an equation that is multiplying or dividing. So those are good things to know when we are working with tables and graphs, okay? And again, I put some more key vocabulary down here for you because we're still gonna focus on vocabulary, but now we're gonna look more specifically into tables and graphs, okay? So we're gonna open up our notes, and the first thing we're gonna talk about is going to be tables, okay? So example number 1 says, which equation represents the relationship in the table? So it says, Ms. Talamontes gave extra credit on the last test to all students who came prepared to class that day and brought a can for the canned food drive. The table shows the total points based on the students' test scores. Okay, so it says which equation could be used to find P, the total points depending on the student's test scores. Okay, so the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna label our variables. So we have the letter P and the letter S. So obviously P, they told us, stands for the points. So above points, I'm gonna write the P, okay? And then it says test score is S. So above test score, I have my S. Okay, so we have score and points, and it's really important that we know which one is which so that when we plug into our equations, we know that we're plugging in the right number, okay? So the first thing that you guys want to look at is in the table what's happening. So from 91 to 95, it's getting bigger. If a number is getting bigger, that means it's either adding or multiplying, right? We're not getting smaller. Smaller would be subtracting or dividing. So I know that my equation is going to be adding or multiplying. So I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of answer choice B and answer choice C because those are subtracting, and I know that nothing's getting smaller, okay? So now it's between A and D. So in order to test A and D, we're gonna test the last section of the table. We're gonna choose the last section of the table, okay? The last section is always gonna be our best option. So we're looking at it, we have 80 and we have 84, okay? So 80 is the S and 84 is the P. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna plug in and we're gonna see which one matches. So right here, for P, we're gonna plug in 84. So we have 84 equal sign, the number 4, and then we have the S sitting right next to it. So what does it mean when a number and a letter sit next to each other? It means that we are going to multiply. So we have 4 times, and then our S. So our S was 80, okay? So if we're gonna solve this, 4 times 80 is 320. Does 84 equal 320? The answer is no. And so A is not the right answer. So now we're pretty sure it's D, but we do want to check ourselves just to make sure. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to plug in to answer choice D. Okay, so we start with our P. Again, we're using that last section, so P was 84, equal sign. This time it's S, so our S was 80. And then we have a plus sign and a 4. So on this side, we're still at 84, equal sign. 80 plus 4 is 84. So 84 does equal 84, and therefore D is the best answer. So now, instead of relying on vocabulary, they gave us equations. All we had to do was plug in information to see which one matched. Remember, we eliminated B and C because they were subtracting, and when we look at our numbers are getting bigger, and so we knew it had to be either multiplying or adding. Okay? So now it says, which of the variables in the equation above is the independent variable? So remember, if we're looking at a table, we have our X first and then our Y. So independent will be the score. Okay? So remember, independent is your X, and if there's ever time involved, time is always going to be independent. All right, so let's look at example number 2. So now, instead of the table being in the question, now they give us a question and the tables are the answer. So we have to look through these and try to find which of these answers, which these tables is going to match the situation in our question. So example number 2 says a carpenter charges $720 for 18 hours of work. She charges the same amount of money for each hour of work. Which table shows the relationship between the amount of time the carpenter works and the amount of money she charges? So again, we have $720 for 18 hours. So we do have time involved. So time should definitely be my X or my independent. And so I check, this is hours, that's gonna be my X, right? This is hours, that's gonna be my X, hours, that's gonna be my X. Okay, so there's nothing in the wrong place for that. So we can't eliminate any answer choices, but we can keep working through. So let's see, $720 for 18 hours of work. So we can look and we can see that this one says $720 for 19 hours. But according to our question, it was $720 for 18 hours. So this one is clearly wrong because it has the wrong information listed. Okay? So then we keep looking and we can see, oh, this one right here, right? It has 720 listed every single time, and none of them are 18. So this one is also going to be a wrong answer simply because none of these 720s is matched with the 18 from the question. So now we have between A and C. So all we're going to do is we're going to have to figure out what it costs for 1 hour of work. Yeah, 1 hour of work. Or actually, we're going to go and we're going to find out 2 hours of work. No, 1 hour. We're going to find 1 hour. I'm sorry. So $720, 18 hours of work. So we're literally going to take our 720 and we're going to divide by our 18 hours of work. So 18, boots and hat, and we're ready to divide. So 18 does not go into 7, so I'm going to put a 0, but it does go into 72. Okay, does go into 72, and that's going to be 4 times 18 is exactly 72. Okay, exactly 72. And we bring down our 0. 18 doesn't go into 0. And so I get $40. So essentially she's charging $40 per hour. Okay? So which one of these is showing $40 per hour? Well, we don't have a 1 for hours, so we're just gonna have to multiply and see. So if 1 hour is $40, well, then 2 hours would be $80. So this one matches. And then 3 hours would be 120. So this should be 120 because 3 times 40 equals 120. So this one does not work, and therefore C is wrong and A is your best answer. Okay? All right, moving on. We have writing equations from a graph. Writing equations from a graph. So these, we have 4 coordinate planes, 4 graphs, all quadrant 1. Okay, so the first thing that I'm gonna look at is I'm going to read my question. So we're gonna read the question and we're gonna try to match the graph. So it says, the owner of a food cart sells an average of 120 frozen treats per day during the summer. Which graph best shows the relationship between days and the number of frozen treats? Okay, so we do have time, right? Days is time. So remember, time is always going to be on your x-axis. So we have our x-axis here, just like always. So I want to make sure first that time is written on my x-axis. So looking here, number of days is listed on the y-axis, which means this is a wrong answer because time is always going to be independent. It's always going to be the x-axis. Okay? This one, letter C, same thing. Number of days is written on the y-axis, but we know that time should be independent, so it should be the x-axis. So that one's wrong. So now we just have between B and D, okay? So now we're just comparing because we can see the number of days is on the x-axis for both of these, which means it's independent. So we just have to match which one goes with the 120 frozen treats per day. Okay, so on day 1, right, they sold 120 treats. So then on day 2, they would sell 240, right, times 2. So let's check and see if we're where we're supposed to be. So on this one, it says day 1, right, there's day 1, and we're just above the 100. So that looks like it's probably 120, okay? And then we can see day 2, we're kind of right in the middle of 200 and 300, which is probably 240. So this one's looking really good. So let's check this one. So this one says on day 1, it's less than 100. Is our answer supposed to be less than 100? No, it's supposed to be 120. So this one does not make sense because it's not listed correctly. We should be at 120, which is right above the 100 right there. Okay, so our best answer would be B. All right, and that's how we write equations from tables and graphs. You're gonna really focus on your labels. Focus on your labels. Remember, time is gonna be your x-axis. And when you are solving with a table, don't forget you can plug and check really easy.